Most real estate transactions have conditions for both home inspections and financing approval. This video will be a deep dive about home inspectors in general, as well as go over the results of a home inspection that was done on my house. As always, use chapters to skip around to the parts you're most interested in. I'll be giving the facts, as well as my personal opinions, which for the most part won't be too complimentary. Home inspectors are the only tool available to home buyers to help them be informed about what risks they might be taking on when they're making these huge purchases. It's an enormous responsibility that many treat as nothing more than a day job. And coming from the trades, they try to bang through as many as possible, as fast as possible. Everything I talk about today will be specific to Calgary, Canada, but you should be able to use the same principles wherever you are. Just make sure to check the details for your area. Building code will likely be different, as well as the rules and regulations around home inspectors. I'll start by talking about inspectors in general and some things you should do before you hire your inspector. The job of a home inspector is to give you an understanding of the condition of your home. The government website says, a home inspector can tell you the physical condition of your home. But if that's all they're doing, and they're not helping you understand what they're saying, then that's a pretty terrible home inspector. In Alberta, inspections are non-invasive, meaning if they can't see it from a surface level eye inspection or normal operation like opening cupboards and appliances, they can't comment on it. So, for example, they can't pry back some siding to see what's behind it, and they certainly can't do any damage. They're also not code officers, so they're not limited to commenting on what building code says. Where a building code inspector might not comment on the terrible drywall patch you did or the awful paint job, a home inspector might. But as a home inspector might comment on how terrible a paint job is, they should be putting it into perspective about how big a problem that is. After all, a bad paint job is a very different problem from having fiber-wrapped, ungrounded 1960s electrical. Ask me how I know. I'll say it again. The home inspector's job is to give you an understanding of the condition of the house. If the report comes back and it's just a big list of deficiencies with no concept of scope or severity, then you've just paid hundreds of dollars for a useless report. Likewise, if the report doesn't contain reasons for why something is considered a deficiency, and this is where being able to reference code might be useful, then again, a lot of money wasted on a bad inspection. After all, if an inspector wants to say that a toilet doesn't have 15-inch clearance to the vanity, they should be clear about whether that's something in code or just their personal opinion. They might prefer even to have 18 inches clearance because they just need that much space for their butt. I pulled up the first 3 Google results for Calgary Home Inspector to use as examples. First, look to see what certifications they claim to have. Only 2 of these 3 made any specific mention to theirs, with the third just saying, yep, we're certified. While you're at it, look for any professional organizations they claim to be a member of. There are a bunch of different ways to become a home inspector with piles of approved courses available. Of course, not all of these are equal. In Alberta, one of the accepted degrees for home inspection training can be from the American Home Institute Training, Inspectors Training Institute. In Alberta, one of the accepted degrees for home inspection training can be from the American Home Inspectors Training Institute, which, as it sounds, is strictly American. It also seems to be state-specific, meaning for $700 and as little as 3 weeks training, you can be a Florida home inspector. I only pick on this one because I wouldn't trust someone who trains in Florida climate to know how Canadian climate works. Be aware that inspectors like to pad their certification count to seem like the most capable expert, and that their memberships in professional organizations will likely land in that pile as well. More logos equals more good. When it comes to professional memberships, in Canada, they're pretty toothless. Several of them have lists of active inspectors you can search through, but have no recourse to take on a member if that member does something uncool, aside from expelling that member from their association. This guy actually had to take the CAHPI logo off his website because he wasn't paying his dues. As for the certifications themselves, have a look on the pages where you can get those certifications and see what they require for it. Some certifications are stricter than others, with some only needing 50-50 pass-fail on 120 question tests to qualify. Would you want to hire a home inspector who gets half of their stuff wrong? Also be wary of certification places that seem more interested in how people will make money and grow their business and all of that stuff than they are in actually continuing education, and make sure people are doing a good inspection. The short on this is, as always, do some homework. And no, looking at Google reviews does not count as doing your homework. If that's all you go by, then you might as well just watch some Homes on Homes and save yourself $500. In the same way, don't be fooled into thinking that someone with big social media will actually be doing a good job on your home inspection. Let's say you've done your homework and you've picked someone who's passed your first round of checks. Here's some things to ask if your inspector will do and if it's included in the base cost. Two that you're probably already familiar with are thermal cameras and drain scoping.
It looks very intimidating. Look how long it is.
Your inspector may need, depending on your local government, additional certifications to look at things like wood-burning stoves or fireplaces. Depending on the age of your home, you might want to get an inspector who can test for asbestos. Just be aware that the seller will likely have to approve of that, as asbestos tests are by nature destructive. You actually have to take a chunk of the house and send it out to a lab. Some people are very concerned about radon. I even had a civil engineer who came to one of my open houses ask me if I had done radon mitigation. But be wary of inspectors offering radon testing, because proper testing actually takes months to complete. Even a shorter 2-day test will be beyond the scope of most real estate transactions. If there are systems on the property that might be beyond the range of a normal inspection, like a swimming pool, hot tub, septic tank, water well, solar panels, or a roller coaster, you might want to make sure that your inspector is qualified to speak on those as well. See if your inspector has sample reports they can share with you, as it might provide valuable insight into the sort of things they catch, and especially how much understanding they provide. If their inspection is full of recommend repair with no explanation, you're probably not going to get much out of that report. Having a sample report will also tell you if they actually know what they're talking about. Let's go through a few. They'll be linked in the description. In this report, they say 13.1.2, the dishwasher drain is not properly run. This could lead to sewer gas smells entering your dishwasher. Recommend repair. This one is really, frankly, just embarrassing for this inspector, because the job of the high loop is 100% not to do with sewer gas smells. That is the job of the P-trap, which appears to be correctly installed in this drain. If the P-trap was empty, allowing sewer gas smells to come in, then you'd be getting stink through the sink way before you would from the dishwasher. Let's look at another one here, down on page 27. He says, there have been numerous modifications and alterations made to the original electrical system of the house and garage, most of which appear to be unprofessionally installed. What does that mean? Does that mean that a pro did a bad job? Or does that mean someone who wasn't a pro did it? Did they see specific failures to meet code or other aspects that might present a danger or risk? Or does the inspector just chalk it up to look sloppy? We won't know because he doesn't tell us. For the last report, we see a pretty serious mistake. In 7.4, he says, basement bedroom without window does not have a cold air return. He's busy talking about the HVAC system and just casually throws out that this bedroom doesn't have a window. If you want to have a basement office without a window, go for it. But 100%, an inspector should know that without an egress window, not just any window, it has to meet egress regulations. That room cannot be called a bedroom. Editing loose here, I just noticed that that picture does contain a window. I don't know if that was the room that he was talking about in the comments. Either way, it's pretty sloppy. So that's 3 reports from 3 different inspectors that they have chosen to put out there because they feel it's a good example of the quality of work they can do. None of these reports did much to give the reader any real understanding of the severity of the issues they're pointing out. There are sometimes some efforts made as to say why they're issues, but they're mostly just wrong. These lackluster, unexplained reports get made for two reasons. First, of course, the inspector just doesn't understand what they're saying, and they're repeating what they heard from some guy that they knew. This is bro science for builders, just like what we saw with the dishwasher high loop. Secondly, and what inspectors definitely care more about, the less they provide an opinion and the more they say consult a fill-in-the-blank professional, the less liability they have when they get something wrong. They're prioritizing protecting their ignorance rather than providing you with proper understanding. All right, let's get to the main event and what started this all for me, the absolute gong show of an inspection done by Nook Cranny Home Inspections in Calgary. I'll go through what I was given and then add in the juiciest, what the actual F that he did at the end. As far as I can tell, the potential buyers were just looking for an excuse to get out of the deal, which, while super annoying, is within their rights when it comes to home inspections. The main reason they gave me for abandoning the deal makes absolutely no sense at all. Unfortunately, because they didn't want to negotiate any price reduction or have me address any of the issues, I wasn't able to say, you're going to have to show me that report before I can even respond. So, to be clear, I have not seen the report firsthand. What I have seen is what the buyers have told their realtor and that he passed on to my realtor and then finally made its way to me. So I can't make any definite affirmations about specific wording or photos featured in the report. What I have is what you see, an email with a deficiency list from the buyer's realtor, which was forwarded eventually to me. If the buyers or the buyer's realtor have misunderstood what was in the report or are choosing to misrepresent what was in it, I can't speak to that. I asked the buyers if I could get a copy of their report, and their response was that I'd have to buy it from them. That kind of tells me a lot about these buyers. I'll go through each of their deficiencies and explain why they're either misrepresenting the situation or are just flat out wrong. I am a firm believer that technically correct is the worst kind of correct. There are instances where what he might have pointed out could be considered technically correct, but with any amount of thought at all, turn out to be complete non-issues. First, we have no flashing on the windows. This is a great example of one of those non-issues. While he is technically correct that some of the windows don't have flashing, as you can see from up here, what he leaves out is they're about 3 inches below the soffits, which extend nearly 2 feet from the side of the house. Anywhere that isn't the case, as with the master bathroom window and the garage windows, they do indeed have flashing. Now, I don't know what changes you think are or aren't happening with the climate, but leaving someone with the impression that somehow rain or snow will blow directly horizontally and land up above the windows, well, that's just irresponsible. Even the building codes inspector with the city saw these on his way out and said, you know, technically there should be flashing up there, but you're 3 inches away. Nothing's ever going to happen. Next, the same story with the doors. No flashing on the doors. Here's the garage door with its flashing. Here's the back door with its flashing. Here's the front door with, again, technically correct, no flashing. And here's the 56-inch overhang protecting that front door. So tell me in the comments, what sort of risk do you think the top of this door is at from rain and snow? This next one took me some time to get because my laser doesn't show up very well during the day, even when reflecting off my tape. Grading in one of the backyard areas sloped towards the house significantly. So I waited until the evening and went and measured it. At the far end, my laser comes to just under 6 1/4 inches. 20 feet closer to the house, it comes to 6 3/4 inches. So this inspector is trying to say that 1/2 inch slope over 20 feet of grass is significant. That's not even technically correct, that's just plain wrong. I wish I could see the report to see if he actually measured it, but with the way this guy plays fast and loose with rules and code, I very much doubt it. Here's the one that the buyers use as their excuse for bailing on the deal. The outside hose bibs were attached to the toilet line. I'm gonna try really hard to not go on a complete rant about this. Here's a picture from asisplumbing.com that gives you an idea about plumbing supply lines. Usually there's one main line that goes all the way through the house that individual fixtures branch off of.
You ended that sentence with a preposition. Bastard.
Sorry, Colonel. The toilet comes off the same supply line as everything else because there are never two separate supply lines to a house. For him to suggest that the outside hose bibs were attached to the toilet line is a problem shows an absolute fundamental lack of all plumbing knowledge, at best. At worst, this was included to intentionally frighten the buyers off the purchase of this house. Like I said before, I don't have a copy of the report, so I can't see his actual wording. But let's dive into, get it? Dive? Because water, and this is plumbing? Let's dive into this in a little bit more detail. Canadian Plumbing Code 2.6.1.4. 1. Pipes that pass through an exterior wall to supply water to the exterior of the building shall be provided with A. A frost-proof hydrant, or B. A stop and waste caulk located inside the building and close to the wall. A frost-proof hydrant is exactly what it sounds like when installed correctly. Frost-proof. Not like water resistant to 10 meters. Frost-proof. Because the valve is all the way back in the inside and warm part of the house, thanks to Mechanical Hub on YouTube for this clip, I'll link them below. When you close this kind of hose bib, all the water all the way back to the valve can drain out. So as long as you don't leave your hose attached over winter, which would destroy your hose anyway, this can not freeze. There's no water left in it. The second option, note that the code said A or B, not A and B, is this sort of stop and waste caulk that has to be inside the building and close to the wall. That means for this house, you'll need to have those valves here and here. And you'd have to have an access panel to get to them. And you'd have to remember to drain them every year. So now you're draining plumbing valves into finished bedroom spaces. And you're pretty likely to forget to do that, or be away on vacation, or have some other thing happen that means that you didn't drain the valve and your exterior hose bib can freeze. That's why these frost-proof hydrants were created. They can't freeze. Because code says close to the wall, then separating the toilet supply line from any of the other supply lines, at least back to the manifold here where they're still connected, and giving them their own shutoff in the mechanical room would not meet code. It wouldn't let you drain the exterior hose bibs properly, and you'd be more prone to freezing if that's what you were relying on instead of the frost-free hydrants. There's no way to look at him raising this as an issue and come away with any sort of actual improved understanding of the condition of the house. He doesn't understand how plumbing works or what code says about it. And come on, look at this plumbing. Tell me you've seen another house in Canada that wasn't a 100% custom build that has anything close to this quality. Continuing on, the custom sink in the laundry held stagnant water and will never fully drain. This kind of fear-mongering makes me think he was intentionally trying to tank the deal. When you hear the term stagnant water, you think of stink, bacteria, mosquitoes, and other health hazards. Nobody thinks a little bit was left behind because that's how water do and will evaporate in a few hours. Speaking of evaporating, be sure to leave your front-loading washer's door open after you use it. That'll let whatever water is left in there evaporate. He continues that loaded language when he says, will never fully drain, because water from any sink or shower will never fully drain. Water is sticky, and you'll always end up with some amount left behind. Here's my stainless steel sink with it. And here's my shower floor with it. So why does he pick on the laundry? Because he wants to chirp about things that he's heard before, flat area bad, instead of applying any thought or understanding. My modern design stainless steel sink leaves water behind due to that being, the nature of water. But he feels like it's not something to comment on because it's not custom. If you want to tell me how wrong I am, upload a short of you doing the same thing, showing that your sink, similarly designed, modern and large, drains every last dropout, and then post it in the comments for me. I will happily eat crow on that one. If this sink doesn't fully drain, well, then you shouldn't be complaining about another sink not fully draining. Finally, if this was the original wording in the report and not just how the realtor translated it, then it is a straight up lie. I don't use the laundry room sink. It was dry when he got there and it was dry when he left. There was no standing stagnant water in it. Next one, basement concrete floor needed some patching or leveling. Apparently, although we never saw that, was probably from the buyer's realtor, so it's tough to dig too much into this one. Technically, if they never saw that, then they can't comment on it. It's a visual inspection. Finally, wood screws on the electrical panel. I've already recorded a video about this and uploaded it to TikTok, after which this inspector blocked me on all of his socials. I also spent part of today pre-filling this room that I'm building in the basement, so I hope that you'll forgive the vertical aspect and my laziness when I just sort of drag and drop this video in here. I'd hope that someone who claims on his website to have over 20 years of construction experience would be able to tell the difference between a wood screw and a metal screw. Unfortunately, not this guy. I'd also expect him to know that these ridiculously fine thread screws that come with many electrical panels are very easy to get stripped out, and the panels themselves can get stripped out too. So to fully secure a panel, you might need a larger screw. Metal screws, especially when it comes to sheet metal, which is what the covers of electrical panels are made of, often have very large aggressive threads like this, or this zip-in self-piercing sheet metal screw used on ductwork. Now, between these last two screws, can you tell me which is the metal screw and which is the IKEA wood screw? Here's a hint. And here's a fun fact for you. Building code, at least in Canada, will basically always bend to what the manufacturer of a building product specifies. So, if the package says metal screw, or even wood/metal screw, then yep, it's a metal screw. Another example of the inspector who came to my place being wrong was when he said that residential toilets needed a minimum 15-inch space from the center of the toilet to a wall or cabinet. That may be the case for international plumbing code, but Canada doesn't use IPC. We use Canadian plumbing code, which, and I've confirmed this with the city's plumbing safety code officer, makes no mention whatsoever of any spacing requirement for a residential toilet. This inspector just doesn't know what he's talking about. I hope this video has helped you get a better understanding of what home inspectors can do, how sorely limited their training can be, and how just completely wrong they often are. If a home inspector sees something on your house that you think isn't a problem, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. These guys, by the nature of being a whole house inspector, are generalists, not experts. A lot of them are mostly just people looking to make a quick buck by taking an online course. The final kicker, I almost forgot to put this in, even rendered the whole video without it, until I went to make myself a late lunch while my hot mud pre-fill dries. This guy right here, used my cookware to test my cooktop, but then left the house with the cookware still on the cooktop and the cooktop still set on high. When I posted that in this Google review, he completely ignored it. He did a terrible inspection, made up nonsense that was contradictory to building code, and created a big fire hazard.